Let's see. We have a caller, David from Boone, Iowa. We love to get Iowa callers. And David is very upset at me at Bob Enyart Live because here at Bob Enyart Live, I'll tell you what we believe, and then we'll go and we'll take David's call. At Bob Enyart Live, we believe that the future is not settled, but that it's open. We believe that God is free. God is free, and God is able to change things that will happen in the next moment or the next day or the next year or the next eon. That God is not locked into an eternally scripted fate, but that God is free. And there are millions of Christians who wrestle with that. And the reason they wrestle with that, the primary reason, and we've debated this, a tremendous debate on the internet, in fact, with a professor from D. James Kennedy's ministry, and I love D. James Kennedy, but he believes that the future is settled. Millions of Christians believe the future is absolutely settled, and not even God. Now, it's one thing when they say, you cannot affect anything that'll ever happen in the future, but millions of Christians have come to believe that not even God can affect anything that will ever happen. Once, let's say, Adam and Eve were created, then today, whatever happened today or whatever will happen tomorrow, not even God is able to alter what will happen tomorrow. And there is a solid reason they came to believe this. And we covered this in the debate I had. D. James Kennedy has a seminary called Knox Theological Seminary, and he has a professor there, Dr. Samuel Lamerson, who's the associate professor of New Testament. And Dr. Lamerson and I debated this issue, whether the future is settled or open. The future, is the future settled or open? In fact, there are about 40 questions there during the course of the debate. It's a written debate. So you read it, and if you think what I'm saying doesn't sound biblical or it's not true, you could look at those questions I posed to Dr. Lamerson and then attempt to answer them and see what answers you get from studying the Bible. Well, Christians have been taught that God is utterly immutable, that God cannot change in any way. And because of that, that is the ultimate fundamental teaching that has led millions of Christians to believe that not even God can change what will happen tomorrow. So that they talk about human free will, and it's really much more instructive to talk about God's free will. In fact, we could just throw out the word free because it's whether or not you have a will. And God does have a will, and God is free, and God is able to do something new every moment. God is able to be creative every moment. And so God is free, and the future is not eternally settled, but open. And with that, I'll go to the phones in Boone, Iowa. David, welcome to Bob Enyart Live.
Hello, Bob.
Hi, sir.
Boy, you certainly have a platform here to promote open theism, don't you?
David, I've been on the air for 15 years. And
not in Iowa.
No, not in Iowa. We're brand new in Iowa.
Yeah.
And for 15 years, we've been upholding the Word of God, Jesus Christ as our Creator, and God as free and able to change the future.
Well, my question was, can God make a mistake?
No.
So if he determined how much rainfall is going to fall in South Dakota, or as the psalmist said, he ordained all of my days before any of them came to be, could he have made a mistake on how much rain he wanted to fall?
All right, which one do you want to talk about first, the rain or all of your days? Because you just misrepresented Psalm 139. So
let's go with the rain.
Okay, with the rain first. All right. God doesn't make a mistake. God does not make mistakes. God has all the knowledge that God needs to have in order to come to a decision, and God has an ultimate commitment to righteousness, so that God does not make mistakes. But from that, you deduce that therefore God is unable to influence what will happen tomorrow, And I'm telling you that was an incorrect philosophical conclusion you make from the fact that God does not make mistakes, and so therefore you think, well, then he cannot influence what is already determined to happen tomorrow. And I'm suggesting to you that that's not true. God is free. David, when you were first convinced that man has no free will, did you?
I was never convinced of that.
Yeah, right. That's because there are millions of Christians who say they believe in free will, but that there's nothing we could possibly do that will change the outcome of the rest of our lives, which is already prescripted.
Well, no, my understanding, philosophers use the term free will in about a dozen different ways.
Yeah, but right.
And
so rather
I never said
David,
that man doesn't have free will.
David, so rather than playing games, do you believe that man is able to make decisions that will change the future? Or is the future prescripted and nothing that we do today can affect eternity? Can we change eternity by the decisions we make today?
Well, I believe that God prescripted all of history, including our free choices.
Okay, so can we do anything today that will change what is already determined to happen tomorrow?
Whatever we do today.
Can we do anything? Can we make any decision today that can change what is already determined to happen tomorrow? That's an easy one, right, David? You believe no, so you could just say no.
Are we sovereign over history?
David, I'm asking you, and why don't we could skip all this part. You could be less coy and say, yes, I don't believe that we're able to alter the predetermined future.
Well, I don't want to commit the sin of answering a fool according to his folly.
Well, that's a little bit rude, David, but I'll let you go with that. Here's what I was trying to get for the purpose of the audience. I was trying to get you to acknowledge that there came a point in time when you, David from Iowa, that you came to believe that man is not able to alter what will happen in the future. There's a point in time when you came to believe that. But
what I do influences the future all the time.
Well, but not other than it's already prescripted. You can't.
There's anything outside of God's prescriptive will.
Okay, right. So when you came to believe that, right? When you came to believe that there was nothing you could possibly do as of this moment that could alter in any way anything that would ever happen in the future, when you came to believe that, whenever it was, let's say it was 20 years ago. Okay, I don't know you. I don't know when it was. But David, when you...
I'm talking on the radio to Bob Enyart. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
That's my son, Joshua.
All right. We hope he's doing well. Okay, David, when you came to believe that, I have a question for you. If you could think back in time. When you came to believe that nothing man could do could ever alter the future.
I never said that. Man alters the future all the time, but it's all according to God's prescriptive will.
Okay, but we can't alter what has been prescripted. You agree with that, right? So I'll say all those words every time when I want to communicate to you, just so you could go along so we could get to my question. When you came to believe that man could do nothing to alter the prescripted future, when you came to believe that, were you also taught that there was nothing God could do? Let's say as of the creation, let's say by the time God laid the foundations of the earth, there was nothing God could do for all of eternity future to ever alter anything that would ever happen. God could not ever have a truly new thought or be truly creative again. Everything that would ever happen for mankind and for God was eternally settled. Were you taught that God would not be free or able to change the future when you believed that man could never change the prescripted future?
That's a big question. I don't know if I can follow it all, but
I'll answer it for you.
Well, you can't give my answer.
I could, David.
Are you being God?
No, I've talked to you enough. You've called in a few times now, and I know when I first asked you these questions, you were perplexed and you wrestled with them, and you didn't know where to go.
I was perplexed with you. I was trying to fit, and then I found out you're an open theist.
Okay, well then, David. Okay, so answer this question:
Which is
God free? Is God able to change anything that will ever happen in the future? As of this moment, things that will happen in the future for all of eternity, as of now or as of the creation of the earth, is God, not you and not me, is God able to alter anything that will ever happen, ever?
Every alteration, every change that occurs is by God's power.
No, you're saying he did that in the past. I'm saying since the creation, as of today, or after after God created. David, you're saying everything that will ever happen was determined by God in the past. I understand that, and the audience knows you believe that. Now I'm asking you a separate question. Is God now, or let's say since the cross of Jesus Christ, or today, or since Christ rose from the dead, is God now free and able to change anything that will ever happen in eternity future? Anything at all? Yes or no?
Why would he want to? He didn't make a mistake with his original ordaining.
David, are you able to answer the question?
I did.
No, you asked to God's motives. I'm asking you, is God free, and is he able to change anything that will ever happen in eternity future? If you don't want to answer, I'll answer.
Why would he want to? I'll answer,
David, I'll answer for you. I understand you don't like
God, which is what you do with open theism.
David, I understand you don't want to answer because the answer is hard for you to admit.
Oh, no, that's not the reason.
Well then would you answer the question? I'd rather not answer for you. I'd rather you answer it.
Well,
I'll ask it again.
It's a foolish question. Like I said before, I don't want to answer a fool according to his folly.
Okay, I will answer the question then. I'll answer it for you, and then I'll answer it for me. And I've now endured twice that you've been rude to me, but I'll keep you on. Okay, first I'll answer the question from your perspective. You believe that God is not free or able to change anything that will ever happen in eternity future. You believe that. Here's what I believe. I believe that God is free and able to be creative, to have a new thought, to change, to be extraordinary in ways tomorrow that
So he wasn't perfect originally.
No, yes, he was perfect.
How could he be perfect and yet have a new thought?
You sound like Plato, because that's what Plato argued. Plato, a pagan Greek philosopher.
Not Plato, but I like Play-Doh.
All right, well, Plato, Neoplatonic thought, the argument from the pagan Greeks was that if anything was perfect, it cannot change. And if that were true, Christianity would be false, because God the Son was eternally spirit. God the Son is part of the Trinity. He's eternally God. And yet God the Son humbled himself, which is a change. He lowered himself. He emptied himself of his quantitative attributes as God, and he became a man. He became flesh. God the Son was not eternally flesh. And when I asked you on the show, David, if God the Father is eternally pouring out wrath on his Son, do you remember how you answered that question?
I said no.
No, you did.
At first I said...
I wish you would have said no. Let me tell...
He relates to it.
Let me tell you how...
He scourges all those whom he adopts as sons.
Let me remind the audience, right? That's what you did, and that was sad. I asked you, we're talking about the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, the most significant moment in eternity.
Would you agree God predestined?
And David, I asked you if God was eternally pouring out wrath on his Son. Even at this moment, and for all of eternity future, is God pouring out wrath on his Son. And you gave an answer. You said, well, God chastises the members of the body of Christ. And I realize you were thinking,
right?
I realize you were thinking on your feet, right? But we don't want to make the crucifixion a metaphor for the suffering of Christians, because that's what the Jews do with Isaiah 53, and they say there is no Messiah who will suffer. It's just the suffering of the people.
Christ said to take up your cross daily.
All right, now, David, I'll ask you the question now, is God the Father eternally pouring out wrath on his Son?
No, he did that once.
Right, very good, perfect. Another question. God the Son, was he eternally flesh? Was he eternally a man, or did he become flesh?
He took on flesh.
Did he become flesh?
He took on flesh.
Did he become flesh?
He was God and man at the same time.
Did he become flesh?
He became man. He was God, and he became the God-man.
Right, exactly. Jesus Christ is God. So did God the Son become flesh? Maybe you think I'm trying to trick you. I'm not trying to trick you. The Gospel of John, chapter 1, says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God.
He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him. Without him, nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men.
And then you know the verse that says, and the Word became flesh.
Yeah.
Right? What was that? John 1:18. So that, did God the Son become flesh?
Yes.
Was God the Son always flesh?
No.
Right. So Plato was wrong. Plato was wrong in his darkened, foolish mind when he said that anything that changes must have been imperfect. That's false. Because when God the Son humbled himself, and when he became sin for us, he took on the punishment of our sin. That was all a change. None of that was anything he had to do. He did it willingly because he loved us. And so God is free and God is able. And when you intellectually agreed with the concept that man can do nothing to alter the prescripted future, what you didn't realize you were buying into was that God can do nothing to alter the prescripted future. You didn't realize you were buying...
God ordained the prescripted future.
And now you believe that God is unable. You now believe that God is not free and unable.
I believe he didn't make any mistakes with how he ordained things.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it possible that God will shorten the days of the end times?
If that's what he prescribed to do.
No, is it possible he'll shorten? Is it possible that we could hasten the coming of the Lord? You see, the Bible presents God as alive, not as a stone idol. A stone idol can't change. A stone idol is dead, is stagnant.
You should interview Kevin Swanson on this subject.
I love Kevin Swanson. He's a dear brother in the Lord.
Well, I do too. You should interview him on this subject.
I would love it.
Well, I will tell him you would love it. Because...
Hey, David, let me ask you. We only have a little bit of time left.
Okay.
Do you think it's God's eternal will that I would be on the radio in Iowa on KFFF?
Certainly.
Do you think it's God's eternal will that I would be teaching that the future is open and not settled?
It is prescriptive will. But
I want to know, do you think God is the one who determined that I would teach that the future is open? Was that my idea originally or God's?
He ordained all the truth and all the falsehoods that you promote.
So I want to know from you, do you think that God has ordained that I would teach that the future is open?
What did I just say?
You said yes. And so you're mad at me that I'm doing what God requires of me, that I have no possible choice. I could do anything else.
I didn't say you didn't have a choice.
Yes, that's what you believe.
Do you have a choice?
Hey, David,
Kevin Swanson on the subject?
David, when a man rapes a child and murders the child, do you believe that God orchestrated that rape for his glory and his pleasure?
Do you believe he orchestrated?
David, answer that question. Answer that question. We're out of time. No, you're not the host. I put you on hold. I'll bring you back if you answer that question. If you answer that question with a yes or a no, I'll take it. We'll continue this tomorrow. David, do you believe that God orchestrated the rape of a little girl and a murder for his pleasure and glory? Yes or no?
I believe he orchestrated the crucifixion of Christ.
Okay. David didn't. Notice, many Christians are afraid of what they believe because it sounds so raw.